don't think I'm gonna need this. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. This one? Okay. I'm trying not to turn it off. All right. Does it work? Okay. So should I move the podium towards the camera?
No, we can see.
Okay.
We can see it, yeah.
Okay.
I think you're too far back.
Should I come up a little bit?
So you're too far back.
Okay. All right, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for people joining on live stream. My name is Roman Iqbal. I'm the Legal and Executive Director for CAIR-Ohio. So very briefly, for people who don't know about CAIR-Ohio, we are a civil rights organization for Muslims. Our job, simply put, is to defend the civil rights of Muslims. I also want to introduce two of our staff members, and that's Tala Dahabur. She's one of our lawyers, and Cecilina Abawi. She's one of our other lawyers. And I'm also an attorney, though I'm also the executive director. So CAIR-Ohio has 3 offices in Ohio. We have an office in Cleveland, we have an office in Columbus, and we have an office in Cincinnati, and I work at the Columbus office. So obviously we're here today to talk about, I'm sure you guys have seen the flyer, and we are here to talk about our legal rights. So I want to begin by talking about the one question, or the sort of series of questions we get the most, which is when people are traveling, especially when they're at the airport or when they're at the border. So is it okay, Sarah, if you make it a little interactive, ask people? Okay, all right. So let's talk about the airport. So obviously most of us travel, and obviously a lot of us travel internationally. We have families abroad. So let me ask a quick question here. I want to do this with a series of questions, especially for what to do at the airport. So let's say you're at an airport and you are there to fly, you're flying out of the country, because when you're coming back in, it's not that much of an issue. It's mostly when you're flying out. So let me begin by asking, if you go to the counter, and the CBP, which is the federal agency responsible for taking care of security at the airports, especially when you're flying abroad, if their agent or any other government agent at the airport, if they ask you for your phone, what do? Any answer? If they say, hey, can I see your phone?
Don't give it to them.
Yes. All right. That's the right answer from Sarah. If they ask, and this is the key part, if they're asking you, the mere fact that they're asking you, that means they're asking for consent. They're not demanding, they're just asking, hey, can I see your phone? And the answer should be, if you're wise, is that no, I'm not giving you consent to see my phone, because your phone obviously has personal information. It has pictures of your family. It has conversations you're having with your friends, with your family, and why would you want a stranger to see that, right? So I want to begin with the doctrine of consent. When they ask you, can I, the simplest and the smartest answer always is no, because they're simply asking you. In a lot of cases, the matter will end there, because they asked you and you said no. Can I see it? No, you can't. And the matter will end there in almost half the cases. The problem gets resolved. Now, let's say they say, no. They demand now and they say, hand it over. So now they're not asking. They ask and you said no. And now the agent says, please hand over your phone. Any answers what to do? If they demand and say, you need to hand over your phone. Any guesses? Except for the lawyers. No guesses from the lawyers. What's that?
Ask for a search warrant.
Yeah, so the answer is no. That's a good answer. In general, thinking about search warrant, so the answer from the audience was that ask them for a search warrant. Unfortunately, when the airport and they're demanding to see your phone, you can't really ask for a search warrant because the CBP and the US government considers your phone to be just like your luggage. They consider the phone to be an accessory just like your luggage. So just like the US government has, the right to look at your luggage, to open your suitcase, the phone is considered in a similar way at the airport. So if they demand to see your phone, you will have to turn over your phone. And this is important. And remember, the initial question was, can I see it? And then you said no, and have the, 50% of the time they'll go away. But now they're demanding. They're saying, no, you need to turn over your phone. At that point, you should turn over your phone, because if you don't turn over your phone, they will snatch it from you. And that happens all the time. They will physically take the phone from you, or they won't let you fly. So if they demand, you have to turn over your phone. So what happens, and I want to ask a question about that. I don't think people would know. So what happens if they take your phone? Now they just take your phone and they just take it from you and they just say, all right, we're going to, search your phone. So two things can happen. They can look at your phone right in front of you and they can give it back, or they can basically take your phone and they say, all right, we're going to keep it. We're going to look into it in more detail. We're going to search for it more. What happens then? So here's what you have to do at that point. If that is happening, you have to ask for the name of the person who has taken your phone, and you should ask for a receipt of the phone, the fact they have taken your phone, because the government has a right, generally speaking, to keep your phone for up to 21 days when they take it from you at the airport. So once they take your phone, they can keep it for, generally speaking, 21 days, unless they can extend it because there are exceptions. So what you want to do is you want to first, ask them the name of the person who's taking your phone. Make sure you get a receipt, because the US government at the airports, they take a lot of stuff. And if you don't have a receipt, sometimes it's not they're being malevolent, it's just the phone, they may not be able to figure out where your phone is. So get a receipt, get the name of the person, and then you have 21 days to basically get your phone back. You can, of course, call up, at that point, you should probably call up CAIR as well, or another lawyer if you want. And obviously, we have multiple lawyers on staff, so feel free to call us if that is happening. So let me ask you something else now. Let's go back to where you have the phone in your hand, right? Because taking a phone away for 21 days that's not that common. What's more common is they get the phone from you and they say, can I have your password? Any idea what to do if they're asking for your password? Any guesses? Open your phone? Yeah, the answer, you don't have to give your password. So if they're asking for your password, then yeah, go ahead.
This is after they demanded that you hand them.
Yeah, of course.
You don't have to give them your password.
Yeah. Well, once they demand, and as I said, you have to give over the phone.
Yeah, but you don't have to give over the password.
Yeah, so once they take the phone, the question is, can they demand to see your password? And the answer is no. They cannot get something which is in your head. That is information you don't have to share. So if they're asking you for your email passwords, for your phone password, phone passcode just to open your phone, the answer is you don't have to. That is your legal right to say, no, I'm not going to give you my passcode. So something here to consider is that if you don't have a number passcode, but you have, let's say, a face ID, or if you have a finger ID, they can put the phone on your face, by the way. They can simply take the phone and put it on your face and have the facial recognition work to open the phone. If you have a ID, which is, with your finger, yeah, they can demand that you put the finger on. They can sometimes grab your finger. There are cases where they would simply grab your finger and put it on the phone. So if you don't want them to open your phone easily, use a number passcode, because the number passcode is something that they can never get from your head. And let me just use this opportunity to talk about something else in general. When I say if they ask you for your passcode, you don't have to give it. Generally speaking, any government agent cannot really ask you really about anything. I mean, you have a right not to give, to speak to an agent without the presence of a lawyer. Generally speaking, I'm sort of extrapolating from here, is that going on a little tangent here, is that generally speaking, we should always remember that in a few cases, very few minor exceptions, you don't really have a right to basically have a conversation, and that you don't have to talk to them. If they're talking to you, you always have a right to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. And it is within that principle that you don't have to give your number passcode. So just to reiterate, if you don't want them to just open your phone, use a number passcode. Don't use the facial recognition, or don't use a finger lock, because those they can obviously do it. Something else to consider is that, like for example, I have, as an attorney, I have conversations with people all over Ohio. And I have people sharing all sorts of information with me. I have attorney-client privilege information. So I am, for example, much more leery of my phone being handed over to anybody, because I know that has confidential client people who have, shared sometimes very important legal information with me. So I obviously, and it could be the same case with, with one of you. It could be that you have, you just don't want anybody to see your phone. You have private information on it. So something to consider. What do you do? But you do want to fly. You have to go somewhere. So something to consider is that this is an idea, is that you can also always simply, if you go and put all your information on a cloud, clean your phone, and then when you land at your destination, you can then download the information from the cloud. So this way there is nothing on your phone. And that is what I do, because I would never give my phone to really anyone.
Does this also extend to laptops, iPads, any other tech devices?
Oh, absolutely.
laptops?
Yeah. Absolutely. So any tech device, the CBP, the Customs and Border Patrol, considers this to be just like your luggage, and they believe just like they have a right to get check your luggage, they can also check your electronic devices. So the simplest way to deal with this is to simply upload all the information to the cloud, and then you get to the destination, and then you download it, and then that's what I do. So when I go, if they ask me, I just hand them my phone. There's nothing on it, because I put everything on the cloud. So that's something else to keep in mind if you're sensitive. Go ahead, please.
So what would be a good way of saying no without seeming defiant with the password?
Oh, you have an absolute right not to give the password. You can just say, I will not give you my password.
Oh, you can say that, I'm not going to give you my password?
Yeah, absolutely. And at that point, they have the agent has two choices. They can either say, give you back your phone, which will happen actually in most cases. And in some cases, they will say, okay, you won't give your passcode. We're just going to take your phone. But as I said, even in that scenario, they can only keep it, in most cases, for only 21 days. In most cases, they will just, if you say no, they'll just give it back, because they just want to see if you'll just help them. Because what they're really doing is, in most cases, is that they just want to look at the phone in your presence for a few minutes, just to confirm your identity or something. They are not going to take the phone and give it to the forensics, and usually they don't do that. But if they do, obviously, if you don't cooperate, if you say, I'm not going to give you the passcode, or at that point, they can confiscate, just to keep in mind, depending how much you need your phone. So you have to sort of make those calculations before you go to the airport. The other one I want to talk about is when you're coming back to the country. So that's another. So we are now mostly talking about when you're leaving the country, because typically when you're coming back is not when they ask you for your phone, though it could happen even when you're coming back. And it's the same thing all over again. Doesn't matter going or coming, they can always ask for your phone. But there's certain things which are unique to coming back to America, right? So let's say now you are abroad and you're flying back from wherever, and now you land, you're in Detroit at the airport, international airport. And so let's ask a question here. When you land at the airport in Detroit from, let's say you're coming from Germany, and you land in Detroit, and now you have, again, the CBP talking to you, what can they ask you? well, they can ask you anything they want, but the question is, what do you have to answer? So when you show up at the counter where there's CBP, you're in immigration, obviously, and you obviously, let's say you're a U.S. citizen and you stand in the line for U.S. citizens, and now you have a CBP agent, and the CBP agent basically, starts talking to you. Does anybody here can take a guess on what, do you have to talk to this when you're coming back? Do you have to talk to the agent, CBP agent? So here's one of those exceptions where I said you have to talk to them. So the two things they can ask you, the CBP agent, they can ask you when you're entering the country, they can ask you about your identity, and they can ask you for your proof of citizenship. So you cannot enter America, let's say land in Detroit, and then tell the CBP and then stand on the line for US citizens, right? And then when you show up to the counter, just refuse to answer. They say, are you a US citizen? I'm not answering. That's a bad idea. You have to answer that, unfortunately, as a condition for entering the country. So two things only that you have to answer when you're entering the country: your identity, who you are, and your proof of citizenship. So if you say I'm not, they say, hey, what's your name? I'm not giving you my name. Are you American citizen? Not answering. Then they can stop you, and you can, it's a little complicated what they can do after that, but as a general matter, do answer these questions about your identity and your proof of citizenship, which, most cases will simply mean your passport. Now, what about after that? Can they ask you other questions? Well, of course they can ask you anything they want, but you have to answer them. Where did you go? What country did you visit? Who did you go see? What did you do on your vacation? Any guesses? Do you have to answer those? Do you have to answer those?
No.
Yeah, no. So you don't have to answer those. So let's talk about now answering those questions, right? So as I said, to reiterate, you can answer the question about your identity and citizenship, proof of citizenship, and now they ask you more questions. So let's say, when was the last time you traveled?
About 7 months ago.
Where did you go?
Morocco.
All right, that's a good one. So now they say to you, oh, what did you do in Morocco, sir? You don't have to answer that. How long were you in Morocco? Who did you meet? What cities did you visit? Did you visit family? Did you visit friends? You don't have to answer those. And now I want to be very careful with what you guys take away from this. A lot of times, question is as what happens if I don't answer these questions? So this is something, let's spend a few minutes talking about what happens if you don't answer their questions. So let's get it out of the way. You're going to show them your name and ID passport. But after that, now they're asking you a lot of other questions. And typically, you can also send you to what's called secondary screening, where they take you to a different room, and then they ask you even more questions. So it could just be the CBP guy, the agent at the counter asking you questions, or you could be sent over to secondary screening, it's called, where they ask you in another room and they ask you even more questions. So let's begin with this. As I said, to reiterate, you have an absolute right not to answer anything. You can simply say, I don't want to talk to you. I want to go home. I have nothing to say to you about any of the questions you're asking. What happens if you don't answer is the question, as I earlier said, we get asked a lot. What will happen? Well, technically, if you don't answer, there's nothing will happen. Because nobody can ever get, and the government really can, under no circumstances, can really get an answer from you. You don't want to answer, you don't want to answer. But as a practical matter, what can happen? As a practical matter, they can hold you up and make you sit there for a little bit. How long can they make you sit there? So, and this, I've known lots of cases where this has happened, where person comes in, they send you the secondary screening, especially when they're coming for Hajj, and like it could be endless questions. And the person, I don't want to answer, I want to go home, I don't want to talk to you. At that point, what they can do legally is not compel you to answer. What they can do legally is that they can make you sit down and not leave the airport for typically up to 6 hours. So for up to 6 hours, if you refuse to answer any question, they can make you sit there. Now, 6 could push to 7, but 7 really is the upper limit. If it's more than 7, they really have to let you go. The reason is that if they are doing that, after 6 or 7, especially after 7 hours, they have to basically arrest you. And they have to produce you in front of a judge. And you have done nothing wrong, and they have nothing on you, right? So they just wanted to ask you some kind of fishing expedition, answer this, answer that. Because of those reasons, they really will just let you go after 7 hours. But this is something to keep in mind. If you refuse to answer, you may be stuck there for up to 7 hours, sitting in a room and waiting. And after 7 hours, they will let you go. Because the only choices they have after that point is to either arrest you or let you go, which will almost in all cases, 100% of the time, they let you go. Now, the problem with that is, and this is something which is a little controversial maybe, I personally am of the opinion, and this is not CAIR, this is me personally. Look, if you have another flight you don't want to miss, if you have something really important that you are, you're going for a conference, you're coming back to going to a conference, you're coming back, if you miss that flight, it's the last flight, you may be staying overnight, you may want to answer. That's just my personal advice, because they can make you sit for 7 hours. You may, go get a hotel, you may have to go to work the next day, people have stuff going on in their lives. I think, look, all of us have to make that determination. If we're going to refuse to answer them, can we then afford to basically waste 7 hours? And if you can't afford to waste 7 hours, then answer them. But if you can afford to waste 7 hours and you feel strongly, I don't want to answer these questions, don't answer. Because there is nothing they can do to basically compel you to answer. And this is so important. There's nothing they can do. Yeah, go ahead.
What if you answer incorrectly or lie?
All right, that's a very, very good question. I want to repeat the question. And I think this would be the best question of the day by far. I can already tell you. So I want to, brother, what's your name? Ismail. All right. So Brother Ismail asked a question. He said, instead of not answering, what if you answer and then you end up lying? So here's the answer to that. That is a terrible idea. If you ever lie to any government agent, a federal agent, a state agent, any government agent, if you lie to them, that is almost always a criminal penalty. That is a crime. I would never, ever, if you're not sure, talking to the FBI, the Customs Border Patrol, your local police, if you're not sure, don't answer. If you're not sure, don't answer. Because if you answer and you lie, and lie by definition is you're intentionally lying, and if that is a material lie, right? Material meaning it's a significant lie, you can get in serious trouble. And that is something, by the way, I want to give you guys an example here of, so do you guys remember when President Trump won in 2016, he appointed General Flynn as the National Security Advisor. Do you guys remember that? He was National Security Advisor for like 2 weeks. So I want to narrate what happened with General Flynn. So this guy is the National Security Advisor of this country. I can safely say that anybody who's sitting here, including myself, or anybody who's watching, does not have a higher station in life than the National Security Advisor of this country. This is a very important guy. This guy apparently has a conversation with the Russian ambassador, and they're discussing about, so the Obama administration, because they were concerned about the election hacking and election interference, they had basically put some sanctions on Russia in the December of 2016, right after Trump had won. And in December, beginning of December, Trump announced that General Flynn would be the National Security Advisor. So at Christmas time, General Flynn has a conversation with the Russian ambassador, and without getting into the details, the point he was making to them was that, hey, these sanctions, we don't agree with them. Like when we're going to come, it's going to be a different approach with Russia, right? That conversation, because the Russian ambassador is a foreign, he's a Russian ambassador, the government had access to that information. So the US government found out that General Flynn is talking to the Russian ambassador. Now, when he gets sworn in as the National Security Advisor in next month, in the beginning of 2017, the FBI visits General Flynn to ask him about his conversation with the Russian ambassador. Now, remember, The FBI knows what the conversation was because they had the transcripts. And they're asking, what was the conversation? And the allegation by the FBI is that General Flynn lied about what was the substance of his conversation with the Russian ambassador in December. Based on that, they prosecuted him for perjury, which is basically, well, it's not perjury, it was not under oath. So let me back up. They prosecuted him for lying to a federal agent. So Brother Ismail, to get back to your question, they got General Flynn for lying to the FBI about a conversation that they knew, by the way, they knew what the conversation was. They just asked him, hey, tell us what happened. And he apparently lied in that conversation. And they then decided to prosecute him, and he got prosecuted and convicted. So this is so important. That's why I said there'll never be a better question than yours. If you are with a government agent, I cannot emphasize enough, brothers and sisters, please do not lie. If you're not sure, you have to tell them you are not sure. Because if you lie, you are not more important than General Flynn. He was a national security advisor. None of us are that important. Inshallah, maybe one day some of us, maybe will be more important, but right now nobody is. So let's remember that. And actually that's a good segue into talking about the FBI, because we're talking about the FBI. So here's the thing with the FBI, and in generally law enforcement as well. I mean, look, their job is to, prevent terrorism. And one of the ways they do it is by talking to people. They are tasked with going and talking to people, talking to Muslims. If they're looking into terrorism, which they suspect will be committed by Muslims, and we have to be real, there is terrorism done in this country in the past by Muslims, right? So they are tasked with stopping that. And as a part of that, one of their job duties is to go just talk and do surveillance, talk to Muslims and figure out what's going on. So we got a question. I mean, this is a very frequent question we get. FBI is calling me, what do I do? So here's what you need to know. If the FBI is calling you to talk to you, in most cases, well, in some cases, it could be because your neighbor is a bad guy. It could be because, your neighbor has a meth lab in his, it could be a lot of things. We don't know why they're calling you. But in most cases, when Muslims are called, especially Muslim men, it's usually because they're doing surveillance. Maybe they think you know somebody. Maybe, somebody you played soccer with, whatever, somebody you played, in Bangladesh or whatever 20 years ago. It could be because your neighbor did something, now he moved on to a different state. They're investigating the other guy. They want to talk to you. There are lots of reasons to talk to you. So here are your rights, again, with the FBI and any type of law enforcement. And if you remember what I said, you always have a right to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. You always have a right to say, no, I don't want to talk to you. And there is no warrant. There is nothing in this country where the FBI or law enforcement can compel you, can demand you to answer the questions. That does not exist. There is not a warrant. There is nothing. There's just nothing exists that can demand that you answer the questions when they show up to you. So you have a choice to make. And this is, again, I'm going to give you not CAIR opinion. This is my personal opinion. This is going to be personal. This is Roman Iqbal's opinion. I personally think, look, if you have the FBI law enforcement contact you, and if you're a Muslim man in Ohio, there's a good chance at some point you probably will be contacted, right? What do? Let's begin with the fact that you have an absolute right not to talk to them. So that's established. Moving on from that, right, what should you do? My advice is that, you don't know why they want to talk to you. Maybe they want to talk to you because they're trying to solve a crime which has nothing to do with you being Muslim. It could be because your neighbor is a pedophile, right? And engaging in child pornography, and they want to talk to you about, have you seen something, right? We have no idea what they want. It could be that somebody that is a suspected terrorist, right? It could happen. I would say that, and this is my personal advice, that, look, we have 4 lawyers just in CAIR-Ohio, and our lawyers are free. All our services are free. We don't charge money. You can just call us, and we can accompany you to make sure your rights are respected. But I would not personally say you should always just tell them, no, go away. I would just say, take the card and say, all right, I'll get back to you, and my lawyer will get back to you, and you just call us. And then we can facilitate that meeting. right? And we can basically accompany you, and we've done that hundreds and hundreds, thousands of times, by the way, in the last, probably since 9/11, probably thousands of times, just in Ohio, where we have basically, called up the FBI and facilitated a meeting. Now, why is it important that you meet with a lawyer if you're meeting law enforcement or the FBI? So one of the things with the FBI is the FBI does not record your conversations. So when the FBI meets with you, there is no phone recording. They don't record. They're not allowed to record. So they take notes. So if there is a dispute between what you said to the FBI, getting back to your point about, Brother Ismail's point about lying, right? Or let's say in this case, you accidentally gave them wrong information. Remember, the problem here is that it's your word against the word of two agents, because typically just two agents, there's no recording. So one of the advantages of getting a lawyer, if nothing else, you have a witness. You have another person who was there in the room with you. The other advantage is that, the lawyer can obviously basically call up the FBI and say, hey, what do you want to talk about, right? Like, what is this about? You can, maybe sort of, narrow the scope of the conversation. They can also discuss with you. Like if you call me and say, hey, I'm going to go talk to the FBI, I'll have a discussion with you. Say, okay, all right, let's go over some facts. Make sure that, again, you don't give wrong information. Because remember, if you give information, you're lying, and the lie is material, meaning simply put significant, you can get in serious trouble. So my advice, again, personally, is I do not think that we should go tell government, I don't want to talk to you. I don't think that's wise, because we have no idea what they're asking. They could be trying to help us. Who knows what they're asking, right? So I think, but you want to protect yourself, right? We don't also want to protect ourselves. We want to protect our constitutional rights. We have rights in this country. So the best medium for me is you take the card, be it law enforcement, be it FBI, you take their card and say, my lawyer will call you back, and you can just call CAIR. As I said, just in CAIR-Ohio, we have 4 lawyers now, alhamdulillah. We don't charge any money, and we can facilitate that meeting. We can talk to you, and at some point we may advise you not to talk to them, depending on what that conversation is. But in most cases, yeah, we probably facilitate something and see what happens. So, and that is, by the way, for FBI and also for law enforcement. And the reason, again, is that if you meet alone and you end up in a lie, or maybe you're not even lying, you just misremembered facts, it can have very grave consequences. So something to keep in mind. I want to also briefly talk about in general, and so let's talk about this. We're talking about law enforcement, obviously FBI, but let's talk about local law enforcement. So you're driving a car, and they stop you, and they ask you, when you roll down your window, and the first question is the ID and insurance, right? Do you have to show them your ID and insurance in Ohio? Any ideas? Yeah, you have to. You can't tell them, I'm not going to show you my ID. I'm not going to show you my insurance. Well, they'll write you a ticket. I mean, you could, but you'll get, you'll probably get arrested if you don't show your ID, but because they may have cause for that. But generally speaking, if you just not give them information, they'll probably, in most cases, you just get a ticket. So again, you don't want a ticket, just show them. And the other thing is, like, I think that we should not be jerk. I mean, as Muslims, I think we also want to be, we live in this country and we pay taxes, and these guys and men and women, law enforcement, are paid by us. So let's not just be jerks to them for no reason. If they're asking us because we were speeding and they stop you, and they're asking you, if you're speeding and they stop you, they say, hey, do you know you're speeding? Well, don't be stupid and say yes. Like, say, don't say anything, of course. But if they're saying, hey, can I see your ID, insurance? Don't be jerks and say, no, I'm not, I'm not speaking to you. Just show them your ID. You were speeding. Show them your ID. Show them your insurance. Nothing will happen. You probably get a ticket. Then you just don't speed. So, but don't tell them, by the way, generally as a lawyer, I would advise is like, they should ask, hey, were you speeding? Or I love when they say, do you know what you were doing wrong? Don't tell them what you were doing wrong. Like, yeah, I was speeding. Oh, by the way, yeah, I jumped 3 red lights. So don't do that. That's not to your benefit. Not a big deal. You just got a ticket. No grave consequences, but why be stupid? How about if they ask you, let's do this. Let's say they say, after the license and insurance, they say, sir, can I search your car? What's the answer? It's always no, right? Can I? No, of course. That should be the answer right off the bat. Can I? Asking for consent. Don't give consent. It will never benefit you to give consent. They say no. Now, if they have probable cause, and we won't get into that, it's boring. they can search your car. And as a general rule, they ask you, can I search your car? No. But after that, if they're going to search your car, they're going to search your car. They have guns. I would step aside, let them search your car. Because you have done your job by withholding consent. Say, no, I don't consent to searching my car. After that, step away. It is not to your advantage to fight with them because they have guns, you don't, as a simple matter. You don't want to aggravate them. You have done your job. Same thing when they come to your home. They come to your home, knock on the door. Sir, can I enter your home? What do you say?
No.
Of course. No, you don't. You can't. Don't give consent. It will not benefit you in any way to give consent. But at the same time, if they show you a warrant and they say, I have a warrant to enter, and that's what you were asking about the warrant, right? If they show you a warrant to enter your home, yeah, let them enter, but you can still say, I don't consent. Because legally, once you have said, I don't consent to you searching my car, I don't consent to you entering my home, you have done your job, you have covered your legal basis. You now have a right to challenge them later if their entry was illegal, right? You have done your job. But after that, step aside. Let's not fight with them and stop them from entering the home. Let's not fight with them from entering your car, because again, they have guns, you don't want to we want to protect ourselves as well. Okay, so, all right, I'll share something else. I don't usually share that Muslim audience, but I feel like sharing it. So in Ohio, if you're walking down the street and they say, hey, can I see your ID? Do you have to show your ID? Any guesses? You're walking on the street, not in the car, walking on the street.
No.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, when I go speak, I used to speak a lot at college campuses, and typically would be mostly, audience of white college kids. And I would tell them, don't ever show your ID. But again, just be careful. I mean, you have a right in Ohio not to show your ID. But, if you are a Black Muslim, let's be honest, and you're walking down the street and they ask you for your ID, I would probably show my ID. I think that we have to be careful. We all see what has been happening around the country. Probably compliance is better, but you absolutely have a right in Ohio not to show your ID for walking down the street. That is your right. But again, we have to look at the situation and we have to look at the environment in the country. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this just in Ohio or all states?
I don't know, but it's all states. It's about I know it's in Ohio. Yeah,
This extends to like green card citizens and undocumented citizens, correct?
Yeah. So
To a certain extent.
Are you talking about asking for an ID?
Someone's listening, they're a green card citizen. Or
Yeah.
undocumented.
Yeah. So let's go back. Actually, I want to go back to. Let's go back to the airport question. Actually, when you're at the airport, when I said you're a citizen, you don't have to show anything. Just give them your passport. The problem is if you have a green card. One of the things to remember, and I'm glad Sarah you brought it up. And now we're talking about green card holders, and I'm going to go back to the airport situation because people are listening. If you're at the airport, what we have seen in the last several years is that when people are sometimes entering and mostly when they're leaving the country, sometimes the government makes them sign a form to give up the green card because the agent will tell you, you have your green card, basically you have violated the condition, you didn't stay in America long enough or whatever reason, you need to surrender your green card, sign the form. In no case, under no circumstances can you sign the form to give up your green card at the airport. If the agent says sign the form, refuse. Demand to see a magistrate. If you sign that form to give up your green card, that green card is gone. So that's one thing, by the way, about green card holders when you're coming or going. In general, I would say that if you have simply you're here on a visa, I would answer the question at the airport if you're on a visa, if you're not a citizen. Reason being, or if you don't have a green card. Reason being that they can just cancel your visa right there. The agent can just cancel your visa. So when we were initially talking about citizen, identity, passport at the airport, that's it, don't have to answer anything else. The problem is that if you have coming here on a visa, they just cancel your visa. So don't take that chance. Outside the airport situation, it doesnto matter, green card, visa, citizen, everybody has the same amount of rights. So we're talking about police, walking on the street, and coming to your home, coming to your car, it doesn't matter about your citizenship. So in America, when you are within America, see, the thing is like the government considers the airport to be not to be part of America, right? So they say you're still at the border. But once you're in the country, it doesn't matter if you're a citizen, if you have a green card, all the rights are equal. It doesn't matter. except for the situation where you're entering the country at the border or at the airport. So, all right. So let's move on. So, Sarah, how much time do we have? So I want to leave time some
We
questions.
have almost like 15 minutes.
Left?
Yeah, a little bit more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
We can go a little bit over if we need to.
Sure. So I want to talk about something very important now, and I want to talk about watch list. And I think that was one of the things on the flyer. And I want to talk about what happens so that we're going to talk about this in two ways. First of all, what happens what is a watch list, obviously, and we'll talk about that. And then what happens, the impact of being on a watch list. What was the consequences of that? And the other one is that how do you know you're on a watch list, right? So let's start with talking about the watch list. So the watch list, simply, the government has over a dozen watch lists, and that simply means the US government, obviously the federal government, that simply means you're on some list where the government has put you on a certain list with some other people where the government believes that, you are somehow somebody, who is, let's say, suspicious, right? And there are almost over a dozen lists we know now in this country. So what happens if you're on a list? Your bank account can get shut down for no reason. If you have security clearance, your security clearance can be gone. If you go file for your passport renewal, they won't give you your new passport. So you go say, hey, I need a passport because your passport expired, and they will simply not renew your passport. We file lots of cases on that. So there are lots of consequences, very bad consequences of being on the list. So I want to start talking about how did the list come about and what are the signs that you may be on a list. So obviously, let's begin with this. The watch list is secret. Nobody knows, they don't tell you, right? But how do you get on the list? So the US government has basically algorithms. They use algorithms. And the algorithm looks at certain behaviors of people. And when those certain behaviors, basically, the algorithm calculates using AI that whether you should be on a list or not. So if you are, for example, traveling abroad, if you are, sending money abroad, if you are from certain, Muslim majority countries, all of them increase your chances of being on a list. Now, most people on the list have done nothing wrong. So if you are on one of these dozen government watch lists, you're not guilty by any means. You're simply there because the security system that we have created after 9/11, especially in the last decade, they basically now use these very sophisticated algorithms to look at behavior. And the problem is that the behaviors that they consider suspicious, but they sort of feed into the algorithm would be like, being from having a name which matches a name of a, maybe somebody on a terror list, right? Like abroad, right? Obviously, if you have a Arabic name, your chances of getting on the name are higher because that name may match with somebody in Iraq or Afghanistan, with matches your name. If you're traveling, as I said, abroad, if you are sending money abroad, if you are from abroad. So all of these things in the law, we don't know what these algorithms look at, but what we do know is a lot of Muslims now are on these watch lists. So how do you know if you're on a watch list? Simplest answer, you cannot know. However, now we know that there's certain things that you will start observing in your life, which should give you an indication that you're on a watch list. And if that is the case, you need to call us at CAIR-Ohio, because we can obviously work with you, because we want to make sure that if you are observing those behavior, observing those things happening to you, that you try to take care of that, because the problem becomes worse, right? So one of the ways that you should your alarm should go off is that if you get secondary screening, we were talking about earlier, every time you come, or sometime when you come to the country, they take you to a separate room, ask you a lot of questions. That's called secondary screening. If they are doing secondary screening, there's a good chance you are on a watch list. So you need to call us. If you are unable to check in on your phone, so you're flying and you cannot check in on your phone, you have to go to the kiosk at the airport to check in. That is usually a sign you're on a watch list. If you get on your boarding pass a quadruple S, if that says, if there's a quadruple S on your boarding pass, always look at the boarding pass. On the bottom, if it says SSSS, that probably means almost certainly you're on some type of a watch list. If you are ever contacted by the FBI, DHS, or if the FBI, DHS and DHS is a Department of Homeland Security, if they have contacted some of your close friends, if they have ever done that, that means you may very well be on a list. So if that is something to keep in mind. Do you guys know what global entry is? It just makes it easy to enter America. You don't have to stand a long line. If you are denied a global entry application, or if you have global entry already approved and they take it away. It does happen. They just take it away. If you try to purchase a gun and you can't purchase a gun, the background check is taking forever. They just won't let you purchase a gun. That would typically mean you are, and we have a few cases of those right now, where they just can't purchase a gun and they don't know why. So if any of these things are happening, I would recommend that you please call us, because that means you may be on a list. And let's talk about now why should you care if you may be on a list, right? Here's why. If, as I said, let's back up and say there are a dozen lists, right? And not all lists basically impact you the same way, depends on what list you're on. Now, some of the consequences that we have seen, as I said, your bank account gets shut down. And that, by the way, is not as simple as, Chase shut down your account. That's like Chase shut down your account, and then Fifth Third shut down your account, and then Bank of America, and then you go on, every bank you go to will keep shutting down your bank account, because all the banks, when they have NA, that means they're basically on the national grid, and they all share the same information. So you need to obviously call us. Obviously, that's happening, because the problem will not go away if your bank accounts are being shut down. Another consequences of being on a list is your security clearance may be gone. So you work in a job which requires security clearance, and one day it's just yanked. That is one of the consequences of being on the list. And if that happens, you obviously have to call us, because security clearance will not be given back to you because you are on the list and they consider you a risk. If you are applying for a passport, for example, a new passport, or let's say you're born here, you already have a passport, and you want it renewed. You just simply want a renewal because passport expires, they won't renew it. So you're waiting 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. You just never get the passport. If that is happening, please call us. We file a lot of lawsuits, successful lawsuits about this. That means you're on the list. Sometimes pages, that you run out of pages and they just won't give you extra pages. If that is happening and you just keep waiting and waiting, and they never tell you, by the way, they never tell you on a list. They just don't do what you're asking them to do. We file a lot of these passport cases. Do let us know. If you are a person who has a green card and you're unable to become a citizen, so you're eligible to be a citizen, but you're just waiting. And we have filed probably dozens and dozens of these cases, lawsuits. Alhamdulillah, all successful, where you have a green card, but you cannot become a citizen. Or you have a refugee here, you're on a work visa, and you cannot get a green card. And and what I mean here is that you're eligible to receive it, they just don't give it to you. It's because you're on a list. And actually that list is called CAIR-P. And you can look it up. CAIR-P is that list. And that list is for people who are immigrants here and are not able to get the green cards, not able to get the citizenship. And if you're on that list, you'll have to contact us. In fact, when we file lawsuits, we filed, as I said, dozens of these lawsuits, especially with green card holders who cannot become citizens. And when you go for the immigration interview, I once was at the immigration interview, so when you go to that immigration office with my client who I had filed a lawsuit for, they were not being given an interview to become citizen. So when they were after the lawsuit, they granted them the interview. So I wanted to show up to make sure everything will be fine. So when I showed up to the immigration office, they actually had a list of like 30 names, and then they had a separate list which said in bold letters CAIR-P on top, and it had my client's name right there, and that was a separate list. So then they send you to a separate, I guess, immigration officer. So this is not some, I'm not giving a conspiracy. You can look it up. It's a very common list. Another consequence of being on a list is that you can never get your relatives to come here. So if you are a citizen and you're trying to basically get anybody to basically your spouse, your parent, they cannot come here. And we had a case, actually we had a case here in Toledo it's a public case, I can talk about it. Rabi Ramadan is the guy, and his wife was he said isn't born here in Toledo, and his wife was stuck in Lebanon for, I believe, almost 5 years. Do you remember how long that was? I think something, yeah. And they just won't give her a visa. So we had to sue the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon for her to get the visa. So that's another problems of being on the list. They will not let you, if you're a U.S. citizen, get your family to come here. And we file lots of lawsuits against U.S. embassies all over the world. We just filed one against the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad and Pakistan, and that unfortunately is a problem. So do let us know. We do file lawsuits for this stuff. We probably represented over 100 people in federal court just in the last 5-6 years. So we have a big legal team. Obviously we're free. If any of these things are happening, please don't wait. Please call us. And something to remember is that, especially when we're talking about, secondary screening, being, can't check in on your phone, getting SSS on your boarding pass, for things like these, don't wait. Please call us, because we can, inshallah, try to help you. Because then, the other thing is, like, once you get on these lists, you can also get on very serious lists like the no-fly list, which basically means you can't fly at all if you're on a no-fly list. And they are American citizens born here, sometimes military vets who have been put on that list. And the point is, like, look, if they're going to put you on a no-fly list where you cannot fly, when somebody has to physically put you on a list at some point in time, if in that point in time you're outside America, you can't fly back to America. I mean, you can look up. There's so many people stuck, American citizens, who can't fly back. If that happens, by the way, and this is so important, if you get put on the no-fly list and you're domestically here, you can call us and we'll inshallah help, but not the biggest deal in the world. You can't fly in America. But if you're outside America and they don't let you fly back to America, do not waste your time by saying, fill out a form. That's what happens. So let's say you go on vacation to England. And when you're flying back from England, let's say, unfortunately, that is the time you get put on the no-fly list. So what will happen is that you will go to the counter in London for the, let's say, United, and they just say, sir, you can't fly. Why can't I fly? They won't tell you. You just can't fly. And at that point, you ask them, what do I do? They say, go to the U.S. Embassy, talk to them. And when you go to the U.S. Embassy, they will say, fill out a form. In 30 days, they will respond. And every single time after 30 days, they will say, no change is warranted in your file. They will do nothing. So if you are outside America and you are not being allowed to fly back, immediately call us, by the way. Do not wait. Immediately call us at CAIR or any other lawyer. Because if you don't do you will not be able to come back. So please do not wait for a month for them to respond. Immediately call us. And the good news is that the judges in this country, at least in Ohio, all over the country, they will demand that if we file a lawsuit, that a citizen has to come back. They will demand that, and every lawsuit filed in that area is always successful. So inshallah. So I wanted to briefly talk about employment, if we have time for 2 minutes, or okay. So I want to talk also about, before we end, about generally rights that we have in an employment situation. So obviously, and I think this is something we should all know. If you go to work, you cannot be harassed because you're Muslim. You cannot face discrimination. They cannot deny you a promotion. They cannot fire you. If you're complaining, they cannot fire you. That's retaliation. I mean, it happens, to everybody, just not to Muslims. So all people of color and all minorities, obviously. And, we all have rights. If you are in an employment situation and you are, as I said, not being given a promotion, fired because you believe for discriminatory reasons, people are harassing you at work because of who you are, you complain, you're protected when you complain. So we have basic employment rights. A lot of work we do is employment cases. We've done lots and lots of these employment litigation. If there's any issue, call us. And in most cases, we don't even have to go to court. You can just resolve it. But what I do want to mention about employment is religious accommodation. A lot of our community would have women who wear hijab. You have men who sometimes want to have a beard, not as common. You have people who want to go for Hajj. You have people who want to pray at work, especially if they're working in a warehouse and you don't have your own office. You may want to pray at work. You may want to do ablution in the bathroom. You may want to take time off for Eid, take time off for Hajj. Here is a law in Ohio and in this country. Everybody in this country has a right to have their religious need accommodated. everybody has a right to have a religion accommodated at work as long as it does not place a burden on the work, right? And the judges, we've done so many of these cases. The law is in our favor, not just Muslims, all religious people. All religious people, the law is very favorable. We all have a right to wear hijab, go to Jama, go for Hajj. Our religious rights accommodated, pray at work. And in most circumstances, they have to be accommodated. So if you ever have that kind of an issue, please call us. And that's just not at work, that's also in school. That can be anywhere. And we actually also get a lot of cases from schools, but not just from work, but we also get a lot of cases from schools of especially bullying of young Muslims. So that's something, again, if you know somebody and who is getting harassed in school, please let us know. The school, the people who run these schools are usually nice, progressive people. They want to work with us. So, in a lot of cases, we can get that resolved. They can be mediated. But no, again, children have a right not to be bullied in school, and they also have a right to exercise their religion in school settings. We also have guides here. So we have a healthcare guide, which is for if you are a Muslim patient and your doctor is not Muslim or hospital, and you want them to know about your religious accommodation needs, you can give them the healthcare guide. We have an employer guide where if you are a Muslim working, you can give it to your HR. It tells you about, Ramadan, talks about, all your religious needs. You can share that with your HR. Typically, they're very welcoming. They do want to give a good, they want to provide a workplace where people can exercise their religion. So we have an employer guide. We also have an educator's guide where if your children are in school, you can give that guide to the teachers, to the principal, and that guide talks about if you have Muslims and what are the accommodation, religious needs of Muslim students in a public school. We also had these cards about what to do when law enforcement contacts you. It's a little card or ICE immigration. So that information is on there. And as I said, our CAIR-Ohio.com is a website. If you guys have any need, any problem, obviously, with any of the issues we've discussed, we're free. We don't charge Muslims. Please give us a call, inshallah, and we can help you. And I'll take any questions that we may have. Okay.
So if someone's put on a list, is it normal that they can also be removed from that list?
Yeah, they do. So there is litigation on that, and they can be removed. Absolutely.
Without using like a CAIR or a lawyer. So
Well,
for example,
yeah, go ahead.
They went through secondary screening.
Yeah.
Right, 1 year, but then they renewed their passport once and it was easy, or they brought their spouse. So they're kind of conflicting. So should they still contact CAIR because of that incident that happened one time ago, or should they think, okay, maybe I was?
I mean, if the incident happened once a long time ago and it's not happening again, yeah, I won't worry about it then. And that does not mean necessarily off the list. That just means it's not a problem anymore. So I think if something happened long in the past and it's not a problem anymore, I won't worry about it. I mean, it's like 10 years ago, I won't worry about it. But the problem is that this typically just will happen again. So, and yeah, you can be removed from the list. Absolutely. People are removed from the list. And whatever the problem is, it stops happening. And a lot of litigation on that. So, yeah.
So I heard about can you talk about the law, or maybe if it doesn't exist, where they can indefinitely detain you without any cause? Is that true, or?
I mean, they have to arrest you at some point. They just can't see detention. So you're talking about not at the airport, right? You're talking about just here,
Just at the airport or anywhere.
So airport is a little different, as I said. In the airport, they can only detain you for up to 7 hours, and they have to let you go or arrest you. They can't just make you sit there forever. If you are in, outside the airport, let's say in Toledo, in Perrysburg, if the cop just stops and detains you, well, you should ask them, am I free to go? And if not, they have to arrest you and take you to the precinct and book you. They just can't just hold you. And you have a right, obviously, not to talk to them, demand a lawyer. Once they tell you you're under arrest, absolutely.
Are you talking about detention centers for undocumented citizens?
Just in general, maybe if they have you as a terrorist suspect or.
So look, I mean, if the government believes that you have committed you're, let's say, a terrorist. If that's the government, or you're whatever wrong you've committed, right? I mean, they obviously have a right to arrest you, book you, put you in, but they have to produce you in front of a judge, right? So you still have to go in front of a judge. They have to produce it the next morning in front of a judge. Yeah, they can obviously arrest you, they can detain you, but then you have to they have to provide you with a lawyer. It's a criminal justice, obviously, it's a criminal issue. They have to provide you with a lawyer. They have to produce you in front of a judge, but absolutely they can detain you. But you go through the process, like if you commit a crime, right? And the government has the right to arrest you and and indict you, right? If they're wrong about it, they're just mistaken. They still have a right to do that, but then you get lawyers, and you have lawyers to defend yourself. You'll have to go in front of a judge. So the criminal justice process will work. And not always, as we know, it doesn't always, it's not by any means perfect, but we still have a process. So you will go through the process, and you will have access.
They can't just detain you indefinitely without a cause.
No. They have to produce you in front of a judge. They have to indict you. They have to charge you with something. They can't just put you in without charging you with something. No, that is not possible. They cannot just simply make you sit in a prison and never charge you. That is not possible. Yeah, I think it was the question. Yeah.
I guess one short one and one not just kind of, yeah. So my first question is CAIR not just Ohio? I'm guessing it's the whole U.S.
So CAIR is obviously in a lot of states. I'm in the Columbus office. We have 3 offices in Ohio, but it's in a lot of states. Yeah.
And then the second thing, we didn't exactly touch on this, but this goes to the airport. I'm scared of going to the airport. So now I'll just kind of explain my story in a short form. So, fortunately, and hopefully we can learn from this too, but fortunately this happened before I became full Muslim. But what happened was I was at the airport. I remember it was Atlanta. And what happened was I was starting to cover, my hair, and I had long sleeves, right? And for some reason, when I got to the security, they told me, hey, take off your head covering. And I was scared, luckily I wasn't Muslim yet. I'm like, okay, fine. So it was a full hijab, fine. I wouldn't do it now. But here's the thing, it's then they told me to remove the long sleeves. And luckily I had something under that, and I told them no. I said, if you want to pat me down, go ahead. You know what I mean? So, in that situation, now that I wear hijab,
Yeah, sure.
I'm just so scared. What would you tell me?
Yeah, so I think that, if you're wearing a hijab, well, first of all, it can also happen to men, right? It can happen to anybody. But let's say if you're wearing a hijab, then the particular issue there is that you don't want to be, if you're wearing a hijab, then you don't want to basically, have strange, men who are strangers look at your hair. That's a fundamental issue, right? So I think at that point, you absolutely have a right to demand that you will only give them access to your hair in front of only female agents. And absolutely, you have a right to tell them that you don't want to expose your hair in front of men. And you demand that they produce female agents, and that you will give them access to search you in front of female agents, and female agents only, in a private space. So yeah, absolutely. This is an absolute right. That's when you're filing for, even when you're applying for a passport, they say, okay, you have to see your ears and all this, right? But you can apply for an exemption. You can apply for a religious exemption. If you're filing for a U.S. passport and your picture has you in a hijab, you can basically file. It's a very simple form. You say, we write them all the time, where you say, I need a religious exemption. So yeah.
So what if you're, as an American citizen, you're at a foreign airport, and then they demand to take your phone, they want to detain you, so what would happen? You're not in the U.S., but you're an American citizen.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to do what they want.
I was in Holland several years back, and I was flying back, and the Dutch agent, he said, can I see your? He said, what do you do? I said, I'm a lawyer. And he said, where do you work? I told him where I work, at CAIR. And he said, prove it. I'm like, I said, how? I said, what do you mean? I said, how do I prove it? He said, you have a business card? I said, I'm on vacation. I have a business card with me. He said, well, how can you prove to me you're saying what you are? And I thought about it, like tell him I don't know if I should really fight with him here. Like, I have no idea what my rights are in Holland to tell him no. I said, well, can you recommend something? He said, why don't you show me on your phone some emails that are written to you as a lawyer? So I turn on my phone was off at that time. My phone had died, the battery. So I had to charge my phone and I had to show him emails, not client emails, but just emails with my signature line. And and then he said, okay, you can go. So, I mean, I won't ever do that at the US airport, but you're in Holland, I have no idea what they would do. So I actually really have no advice on what to do in a foreign airport. I would probably comply in most countries because you could get in serious trouble. You have no rights in most countries, so yeah. Did you have?
So at the airport, when they demand your phone and they take away your phone, you can also demand that if you're using a fingerprint to, unlock your phone, can they demand?
Yeah, they can actually grab your finger and put it on the phone. So if you have a fingerprint lock, yeah, they can demand that you put your finger. And sometimes I know cases they have grab your hand and put your finger on the finger lock. So that's why you want to have a number passcode if you don't want them to access your phone, because they can't get that from your head. And also, guys, generally, I know that people Muslims, sometimes they get asked, I'm sure other people as well, give us your email, give us your email passwords. This is ridiculous. Don't give them your email address password. There's just no reason to do that. But, sometimes people are, want to be nice and they just share that. But I would not share that because that's just it's private. Why would we, give email passwords? So anything else? Oh, go ahead.
So this happened to me. I was in secondary screening. I was overseas for a long time. So when I got back, so they checked my badge and they asked me questions. And then at the end, they said, I believe they asked, can you give us your address and your phone number? Or they may have said, give us your address and phone number. So if they ask, I say no. But if they demand, do I have to give?
You don't have to give them anything.
Okay.
No. But, like your address, they're going to have access to that, right?
Right.
I would probably give it, to be honest. Under what circumstances they won't know your address. If you're putting you in secondary screening, they already are interested. As a practical matter, I mean, you work at the mosque, right?
Yeah.
What are you going, you're a semi-public figure.
Yeah.
It's what would be the benefit in hiding your address? They'll find that out if they want to. Your phone number, they know your phone number. I won't sweat it, but you don't have to answer. For me, I think one of the things also is if they're asking your middle name, they know your middle name is, what's the point in not giving them your middle name? What would come out of it, right? They already know it. And I think middle name you also may use to identify anyway, but go ahead.
So if they ask you questions about religion,
Yeah.
and they ask you difficult questions, but you feel if you don't answer, it could cause you to be put on a list. Should you be considering that, weighing those options? Maybe I should comply so that.
Yeah. So I won't worry about. So the question, that's a great question, is that when they're asking you questions, secondary screening, let's say inappropriate questions, they ask what do you think about Shia Sunni? I know they ask all sorts of crazy. They do. Some of the questions are over the top. They're really crazy. And Brother Ismail is asking, if you were to be asked those questions and you don't answer them, should you consider the fact that not answering can get you put on the list? The way I would answer is that if they ask you that question, you probably already are on it, right? Why else would you ask you those questions? So I won't worry about it. I would simply think about, can you spend a few hours just sitting, and and not leaving? But if you can afford to sit for a few hours, yeah, I probably won't answer those questions actually personally. And I have not been asked those questions. I'm not saying I have, but I know that people get asked, who's your imam? Who goes to the mosque? What do you think about, the conflict between Shia and Sunni? Just totally ridiculous, preposterous questions, about your, how many times do you pray? I don't think that, personally, I won't answer them unless I just could not miss a flight. I probably would answer, if I really was an emergency. But I mean, that's a choice we all have to make. As I said, if you don't answer, they can make you sit for a few hours. So, yeah.
So just follow up on that. what are the questions you would say like, okay, you shouldn't answer? Like,
Yeah. So, but I would say the question Badr is asking is, what question do I recommend answering? I think it depends on your comfort level. I would not say what you should or should not answer. I think that depends, how you feel. If you don't feel like answering, you should not answer. But I don't think that I have a, like personally, like if they ask me like my address, I'll probably give it.
I'm saying like legally, what could get you into trouble or kind of get you?
Legally, nothing will get you in trouble. Nothing. You don't have to answer anything. Nothing will get you in trouble. So there is no downside as in the sense that you don't have to answer. But as I said, they may make you sit for a few hours, up to 7. That's something you have to consider. Not that it will get you in legal jeopardy. Like for me, for example, like they can Google my name and find out a lot of stuff about me, right? Like, I mean, I'll probably answer those questions. Like they already know it. That's why they're asking. Unless I don't feel like answering and I have some time to spare, I probably won't answer. So, but I have not been put in secondary screening personally, so I can't really answer that.
Let's say you get on the flight's about to go, you're in your seat, and then all of a sudden, they want to take you aside for additional questioning. Can they do that? I know
Yeah.
this happens on a very rare scenario.
It does happen.
But
I mean, look, the thing again is like they can certainly stop you from boarding the plane.
if you're already in your seat, buckled up.
Yeah, they can stop you from
They
boarding.
can-
Oh, absolutely.
okay.
I mean, they can stop you from flying from very little. Like,
Yeah, you
Yeah.
see different scenarios.
oh yeah, that happens all the time.
Yep.
Well, not all the time, but it's not uncommon.
But it happens.
It happens. I mean, look, again, like, at that point when you're sitting in the plane, they come and ask you, like, that's serious already. Somebody has complained, basically. What that means is that somebody sitting next to you has complained about you, has misinterpreted something you're reading, something maybe in a different language you're on the phone. And at that point, if you refuse to answer, Marshall will take you off the plane 100% and not let you fly, probably get the next flight. But yeah. So,
If a female Muslim wearing hijab doesn't want even a female from the TSA or whatever
Can't fly.
for him,
they won't let you fly.
they won't let you fly.
I'm traveling with family, and they pull me off to ask questions, but they let the rest of my family go.
That's common too, by the way. That happens.
So I could be potentially like stuck in another country. My family would fly, like leave me behind, or
Like, what are you talking about? Let's say you're outside America.
I'm traveling with family overseas, right? And
Let's take a country like Egypt. That's just an example.
Yeah.
Sure.
they get you stuck there, and your family passed all the questions in like minutes, but for whatever reason they're stuck on you.
So, brother, I want to be very clear. All this question I'm talking about when you're in America, I have not addressed anything about being in Egypt or being in other country. Like, I think if I were in Egypt I'm not, Egyptian, but from my read, I probably will answer everything they're asking actually. But that's just like based on news I read, right? Like I don't have any special insight. And just to be clear, everything we're talking here about is at the US airport, nothing to do what you do in Egypt or in other country. We're talking about what you do when you're here. When you're outside, it would depend on the laws of that country. I have no idea. But I would say if in a sort of a non-democratic country, I would imagine that you won't have much choice not to comply.
Yeah.
You gotta be very careful. So I hope I'm clear. We're only talking about your rights in America, not outside America.
So if they stop you here in America and they demand your phone
Yes,
or your
they can confiscate your phone.
do you have the right to ask them for a phone to call, like CAIR, for example? Should we-
The problem is that, thing is like, you can ask, they won't give it to you. I've actually had people call me while they're talking to them, by the way, and they're like snatching the phone from them. I've actually had that happen like a few times where they literally are calling me up and the guy is saying, give me your phone. Unfortunately, at that time, you don't, because you're not under arrest. So they won't give you a phone to call. But look, just give them your phone at that point. Guys, and one thing, I just want to be clear, brothers and sisters, that if it has come to a point where they're snatching your phone, you should give them your phone. Like I'm saying, if they're asking you, don't consent, don't give consent. But if they're literally snatching phone from you, just give it. You can get hurt.
Get into an argument
We should never get into a fight with anybody with a gun. Like that's just like if you're getting on a street and street corner, and somebody shows up with a gun. Like I won't you won't wrestle with them, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
No, But I mean, like, so you gave them your phone.
They have,
gave them phone.
just get after that, no, after they take your phone, you get a receipt, and then they have to turn over your phone in 21 days in most circumstances.
But I'm saying like that you're in secondary screening, for example, and they have your phone, and you don't want to. They're asking you questions that you don't want to answer. So, would you advise that we try to call CAIR, and then what if you don't have a phone, or should we just wait until they have to let you go?
Yeah, I would just wait and then call us once you're done, once you're out, because they have to let you out because you had done nothing wrong. They're not going to arrest you, right? So then after 7 hours, they let you out. Yeah.
So do you have a right while you're like in that 7 hours, let's say, like if you want to pray or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have a right to pray, do anything you want. Yeah. You can't leave though. Yeah, but you have a right to pray, of course. Yeah. Okay.
We don't have anything for the online.
Okay.
classes, but-
All right. Thank you all for coming, and you can look up our information on our website. And Assalamu alaikum.